welcome back to California Life Podcast, and we continue talking and learning about the law. Galina, welcome back to our studio. I've rewatched all our episodes and your episodes with Sergey, and you did share a lot of insights about immigration and the different types of visas and how you help people with money, without money, preferably with money. But I know that you are a very, very detailed lawyer, and you always look for something interesting, unique, and challenging. What are the challenging cases that you are looking at or working with, or maybe if you have any challenging goals that you've set up for yourself, could you share with us?
Sure, absolutely. Well, my personal mission in person is not to shy away from cases that are highly complicated cases. They actually excite me the more complicated they are, and I strongly believe that everyone deserves adequate presentation. There's no perfect client, perfect case. Each case has its own weaknesses, and we have to learn how to deal with those weaknesses. The complicated cases that we have so far include multiple plaintiffs in labor action, violation of harassment, discrimination action against government agencies. So that's a big one. We've been in litigation now for 2 years, and probably will be coming towards the end in the next 2 years. And what's unique about this case that it started with one plaintiff that finally came forward. And of course, he was really scared because this is a government agency that you're going against, and not that many attorneys will take such cases and go against government. Once he filed his lawsuit, then within a year, we received another 7 lawsuits and 7 plaintiffs. And right now, we're in the process of joining those cases together and potentially looking at the class action case. Another exciting cases or complicated cases in the area of law that we're focusing in is civil law, specifically a business. That's an area that is really exciting and which I really appreciate too, is complicated corporation and business lawsuits. What I mean by that is that, like merging and acquisitions, also breach of, issues with buying stocks and so on, and signing partnerships in various different complicated matters.
Which of the matters were the most complicated for you in your practice?
Most complicated are, well, I'll go back to harassment and discrimination, and I think just seeing how much one carried, meaning how much the person was suffering over the course of 20 years, and then seeing others joining the lawsuit and that also were suffering for the course of 25 years, and seeing the mental health impact on their cases, right? And making sure that client is stable and understands that litigation will be long and difficult, and understands the reality and has adequate support. The most complicated cases that we have so far is, of course, cases in immigration as well that have some kind of criminal law intersection, some serious allegations and violation that unfortunately happened with our client. But like I said, we strongly believe that everyone deserves second chance, and everyone deserves appropriate representation.
That is very true, and listening to your story, I thank God that I don't have any of those issues. I think my life is way more simple and way better in a way, but are we allowed to ask you against which governmental institution is your client suing?
Yes, absolutely, because our cases are in Sacramento Superior Court, and it's you can actually access the case and complaint. Our case is against the city of Folsom.
Okay, and if you obviously are leading the case, what is your estimation of the chances to win?
Okay, I don't know if I can say this.
Well, it's just personal feeling. It's not like something specific.
Sure, absolutely. Very high, very high, and because of how much our clients suffered in this specific instances, there's a lot of witnesses, which is great that were brave to come forward. There's a lot of evidence of discriminative acts by the government, which of course they're trying to state that that was just a joke. This is how we just, it wasn't serious when we made those comments and so on. Well, that doesn't really matter because they were highly offensive and discriminative comments.
Before we move to the next question, I would love to ask you, if you have a person coming to you, whether it's a personal case or a business case, and you know that the person is guilty, but you have to act accordingly to your profession and to the contract and defend the person or the company. How do you make your choice in that situation?
This is a criminal law one-on-one. This is something they teach in law school first year. This is a commonly asked question. How can you defend someone who is guilty? Well, first of all, no one is guilty until it's proved, right? Until you satisfied all the elements and prove that beyond reasonable doubt that person is guilty in court. Until then, you can't say that they're guilty or not. In those cases, the really focus is on the fairness of the procedure, and a lot of times what we look into is due process, right, and constitutional rights. A lot of times that's going to be 4th and 5th and 14th Amendment, just to see, okay, were they treated fairly, right? Are the charges fair? Is the punishment fair? Was investigation fair? I don't know if there were any search warrants and so on. Was that fair? Because we still, even in those instances, everyone has rights to autonomy and privacy, and those rights should not be violated at no circumstances. So really the focus then focuses on the processes, right, and the fairness factors, and ensure that the whole process is fair for our client.
How do you define fairness?
That's a great question, Victor. I think that's for everyone in the courtroom, for prosecutors, for attorneys, and for judges. Really difficult to answer in one sentence, I would say. You really look at the both sides and trying to find middle ground. Also, you rely on law that we have and the rights, and making sure those are not violated. This is first and foremost, because if your right to privacy is, let's say someone is guilty and they committed very difficult, a very serious crime, right? But if their privacy law and privacy was violated, if we let that go in this instance, what will happen in the next case, right? Because as you know, one case is a precedent for the next case, right? And there's such thing as a case law, and judges do look at the case law, right? So we'll have to really make sure to look into what's going to be fair for also our public and safety. So when we're in the courtroom, we focus on three things. First of all is statutes and law that we have, cases that we had in the past, and also what's good for the public, what's good for the public safety in the future.
What if you face a situation then when, let's say this way, the way A might be good for a public something, safety or whatever. But in your opinion as a professional, and it's a theoretical question, the way B would be better. How do you deal in this situation?
The way B would be better for my client?
For the case, for the client, for your company?
Sure. Well, we still have to remember that we're going to be in a courtroom, and judge will be. And that's something that, again, they focus a lot in law school, and they teach you about a public and the purpose of the laws, right? And you look into legislative history to understand what were legislative intent for the law, right? So if for example, I have a case, but I know that public safety will be highly compromised, right? And I know that judge is going to be focusing on the public safety. I know that I'm not going to go with plan B, because judge will most likely will focus a lot on what's good for the public. So it's very complicated. And I was happy because I was participating in ADR, alternative dispute resolutions program, where they were teaching us with multiple parties how you establish the middle ground. And you have to be realistic. You have the law, and let's say you do know that you're going to win this case for your client, but your client, let's say, needs their restaurant to be opened and running right now, and litigation is going to take 3 years for your client, and they're going to spend so much on litigation fees and court fees and so on, right? And even though the law is on their side, is it best for your client? No, right? Because they need to make sure that the restaurant is open and they can be in the business right now. So then you look at what you can compromise, right? And what as client is willing to compromise, right? And find that middle ground. And of course, Victor, if you have a lot of parties, especially in business, that's always partnership, and there's so many companies involved and businesses and so on, that becomes very difficult because everyone has their own goal and purpose, and to find middle ground becomes extremely challenging.
Right. Behind the scenes, we're talking about your big cases and how you are serving corporations and all the civil or business cases that you are dealing with in the court. For our viewers, what would be the most important 3 no things to not do when you have to deal with the court?
Oh, sure. First, I would say be realistic. I want everyone to know that there is a high fees for filing your lawsuits. We have a client right now that wanted to file a lawsuit, and to file his lawsuit, it was $7,000 just to file with the court. If you have a lot of plaintiffs and defendants and so on, first of all, have realistic expectation. Discuss this with your attorney, whoever you're consulting with. Ask them how much is going to be, what would be the charge for courts, estimate what's gonna be my discovery, because you allege something happened to you and something wrong happened to you, right, in your lawsuit, but you need to prove it through a discovery process. You need to get the evidence, right? This is extremely expensive, Victor. For example, to have court reporters, that can cost for $2,000 just per 1 day to do deposition. All court records cost a lot. So you ask about those, and have realistic expectations, because yes, you might be looking at really good, rewarding lawsuit, but how long will it take, right? And how much you're going to spend in litigation fee. Just really have the realistic expectation. Definitely be honest with your attorney, honest with court. Judges are good at this. They're going to be asking you questions, and the opposing side is going to be asking you questions, and they'll see when you're not being transparent, when you're not being honest. And if you lose that belief, and especially if you have jury sitting there and you have a jury trial, right? If you lose the credibility in court, it's going to be really hard for us to rebuild it for you. So it's also important that you stay honest with us regardless of the circumstances. Also obey the court orders. What I see a lot is that people ignore notices that court sends, right, and not filing these things on time. Especially for our community, Victor, I think it's so important. There is no such thing as, I had my lawsuit served, it's been over 30 days, okay, I'll just go back later and just ask the judge to extend my deadline or so. No, it doesn't work this way. The law is very strict. You sign in blue pen in civil litigation. You sign in black pen in immigration. And it's just how it is. You have to have 3, punched holes on top of your paper, and they're very strict. You didn't sign something, right, or you didn't put the date correctly, you don't have proof of service, and now court doesn't have a record that you served someone properly. So just take it very seriously and don't ignore court deadlines, because we were introduced in a very complicated case that was going on for almost 4 years. and client was trying to ask us to jump in into last minute and just extend the deadline and he had good reasons. The client had really good reasons. The court just ignored our motion whatsoever because it's been such a long time, and like I said, there are strict guidelines and you need to obey those guidelines.
Well, that's really good to know. The only question now I get in my head is, can we finance that?
Can we finance? Well, we have a different, of course, especially business litigations, right? And overall civil litigations are costly, right?
Yeah.
There's attorney's fees, there's court fees, fees for discovery, and so on. We do have different options. There's such an option as contingency or hybrid contingency, when attorney can say, obviously, attorney has to evaluate the entire case, and if they see that the probability of winning and getting the damages, right, is really high, then we can offer contingency, meaning we will get certain percentage once we win the case, right? We don't charge you at the beginning. There's also hybrid version where you do some kind of down payment, right, and then you become a contingency case. So it really depends on the case and also the opposing side.
Well, it's everywhere. It has to depend on an individual situation, individual story, all the details. Back to the story that you were dealing with the government. What would be the main, let's say, 3 differences in leading a case against a governmental institution, any, versus if it's a client dealing with a business?
Sure. Finances, and I think it's not a secret that government has extremely deep pockets. Okay, so for your case, they'll hire multiple attorneys, and they're going to be, and what they're going to be trying to do, what we call, it's a game. They're going to try to swamp us in work and just overwhelm us with the requests and so on, right? And not giving us enough time to even breathe, right? That's one of the tactics that attorneys are using, so that way a client just gives up, right? Or attorney just gives up and thinks that case is highly complicated. So that's number one. So they can afford any type of experts they want. They can like forensics experts and so on, right? A client, the private citizen, let's say the plaintiff, will have to pay for those experts. Government doesn't have to pay for those experts, right? So keep that in mind. There's limitations on what you can ask depending on what agency you're suing. There's no such thing as punitive damages to punish them, where you can assert punitive damages against the individual. Then also there's some privileged immunities. Basically, you have to be really careful because you might assert a lot of things, but they might have specific protection because government has a room basically for error comparing to private individual. And thirdly, which is I think is highly unfair, is some of the court fees are waived for them. So even for depositions where I was telling you our clients will pay $2,000 and government side will not pay anything because their fees are waived.
Well, that's exciting. I don't know about you guys, but this story made me excited. I love these mental fights, and Galina, I'm extremely sure that you are great at it, and I know that you're also applying to become a member of a very cool institution. And let's leave our audience with this little cliffhanger. I want them to expect our next episode with you sharing more story about how you're beating up the government. That's definitely exciting, and not only for the Americans, but also for the other countries, because it's only in America where we can sue the government. Please make sure to adhere the advice and have your black pen and blue pen in case you need this one or that one. No red pens.
No
red pens. Galina, thank you so much for coming to the show today and sharing with us. You got me even more excited now. I'll dive into studies myself, and I'll be looking forward to our next episode.
Thank you.